Oh, excuse me.
So are these like condos or something?
I think you would consider them condos. Give yourself. It's a nice area. Quiet. They said they got the centralized mailboxes. Oh, there's maybe enough mailboxes for everybody to have that there.
Wow. That's so cool.
Cool. Oh. Choked court delivered to there because I remember the name choked. There's a good drink. Or anything else you want to say? Pretty hungry here, ain't you?
Are you?
Maybe a smidge. But that's not what I asked. Rick's Boatyard Cafes. Yeah. All that good food.